Hi there, I'm Norbert and welcome to my workshop. Today I'm going to show you how I made a night table that can also work as a coffee table, a lamp and a table saw stand that I made along the way. It's going to be a fun project. Come on, let's go! It all started with 6 boards. Actually, no. Let me come back. It all started with an email. Dear Norbert, we're a distributor of LED lighting panels. Maybe you would like to take up on a challenge? And I did not have to read the rest anymore. If there's a challenge, then I'm in. Of course, the mounting of the panels simply into the wall was not an option. I had to somehow complicate it, and hence the idea of such a table. And then there were 6 boards. 6 boards which I glued together in Paris and made 3 boards. When the glue has dried, I cut off the rounded edges and then cut each board along. This is how I went from 3 boards to 6 boards again. Anyway, I had 6 boards. Using the miter saw, I cut uneven short ends and cut 4 boards roughly in half. Now each of them was about half a meter long, which was a safe margin in relation to the final dimensions. Then I turned the bevel to 45 degrees and cut one end of each board at that angle. The last step of this stage was to cut the boards to the final length. I cut 4 boards to 40 centimeters. These will be vertical elements of the table, and 2 longer and 2 shorter ones, which will be parts of the frame lying on the floor. Now the time has come to taper the supports. To do that, I made a jig and came to the conclusion that I had enough of setting my table saw on high tabletop of workbench. Using 4 pallet sleighs and 8 boards, I made a frame of the table. The stand, actually. I laid a piece of plywood on it, and this is how I made the first of the 2 promised tables in this film. Then I screwed the saw to the table and I could go back to my main project. First, I cut a small dado at the edge of 4 boards, 5 mm. This is the resting spot for the tabletop. And only then, using my jig, I tapered each of the supports. The cut was made to exactly meet the spot where a 45-degree angle cut begins. Had it been too short, it would have looked pretty bad. Had it been too long, I wouldn't have been able to match the elements of the frame. I could now make room for LED panels in each element. The offer of the partner of this film, Luminous, is really impressive. It took me a long time to browse the catalog and it resulted in a lot of new ideas. There are small, large, narrow and wide profiles, glowing straight, and those that are installed in corners, for example in stairs. There are even those that shine behind themselves. They are great for lighting pictures. In the end, I decided to use a profile that is elegant, discreet, and what is particularly important to me, it fits in seamlessly with the wooden table. The profile is 16 mm wide, and that was a routing bit that I used to route a groove for my profile. By the way, I also routed a groove at the bottom of each of the horizontal elements of the frame, so that I can later lead the wiring there. When the time for the glue up came, I considered dowels, screws, dominoes, dovetail, giraffe lip or rhino ear. In the end, I chose the glue. Why? Because all carpenters say that the glue joint often is stronger than the wood itself. And because the frame is going to carry, beside the glass, which weighs a kilo, also a cell phone, a remote control for lighting, and a book. And trust me, I do not intend to read the whole Encyclopedia Britannica at once. When the frame was set aside to dry, I could take on cutting aluminum profiles. I tilted the miter's blade and very slowly and carefully cut off 8 ends at a 45-degree angle to match the frame's elements. Then, just as carefully, I cut the straight ends of each profile, and that's how I had a perfectly matching wooden aluminum plastic set. Before putting these blocks into one eye-pleasing set, I applied 2 coats of rustic oat stain. It should match nicely to my new desk. In each, let's call them runners. In each runner and every corresponding profile, I drilled a hole to be able to lead wires. And that would probably be the end of cutting, drilling and routing. All that was left to do was to assemble the whole thing. But before that happens, let me show you one interesting thing. The design of the frame is such that the size of the table can be decided at the last minute. You can have a small table with large rectangle in the middle, or vice versa. It is possible to reduce the rectangle and thus increase the surface of the tabletop. Clever, eh? I aimed at the size of about 45 by 65 centimeters, although the pleasant proportions of the table were more important to me than the exact dimensions. As I was looking for joining all elements in a stable manner at the same time and making sure I had all angles right, I decided to use dowels. 2 for each joint were enough. After gluing and making sure that these right angles were actually there, I clamped the frame and went to bed. Home and then to bed. I finished the glued frame with a matte wipe-on oil finish. I didn't want any reflections of light on the wood, as I was afraid it would give it too plasticky appearance. And finally, the time has come for the centerpiece of the show. Though I have to admit, I was expecting it to be more of a piece of shit. While cutting the LED strip is a simple task, soldering is one of those skills that I have mastered only to the extent that I can guarantee the fire safety of the workshop, not so much the wiring. And here I was, greeted with a nice surprise. It was not that difficult at all. It required patience and humility rather than a hand with a surgical precision and a sniper's breathing control. Wire at a time, I finally soldered them all, although it could have probably been a million times more elegant. I stuck the LED tapes to the profiles, pulled the wires through, connected them and soldered under the table in the grooves I routed in the bottom. I had enough room to put all my wires and fix them with hot glue. To the outside, I've only let one cable out, and I can hide that anyway, so it came out rather discreetly. Even though I did not use any heat shrink sleeves or anything like that. I connected the cable to the controller and controller to the power supply. And now, for the moment, the tension of which would probably not be reflected by the best of Hitchcock's movies. Will all this mess actually work? Or will it be just an interesting geometric combination of wood and aluminum? So, I'm not that bad after all. Final stages of this project were just taking measurements for the glass top of the table and setting the table at its destination. Let me share some of my feelings with you. Well, I think there were more difficult projects that I've completed, and I think there were even more surprising ones, but I don't believe I have ever created anything more beautiful than this. If it were not for LED lighting profiles from Luminous, it would still have been quite nice, but just a wooden table. Thanks to the fact that in addition to the table it is also a lamp, it has taken on a completely unique character. my whole bedroom has changed. It now has a new, well, centerpiece. Warm, soft light spills all over the walls. The table is lit from early evening until... Thanks, Luminous. So, as you can see, I've managed to combine interesting form with practical function, all into one piece of furniture. I hope that you enjoyed this as much as I did. If you did, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel to make sure that you don't miss any of the future products. This time, that's all. And until the next time, take care and bye bye. See you then.